These are the top 3 landlord mistakes you 100% need to avoid. Stay tuned to find out what they are. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Property TV. So glad you could join me here today. One of the biggest fears that first-time real estate investors have is the worry about the 2 a.m. toilet call. Now, that really doesn't happen all that often, and even if it does, I think personally it's a very easy fix because you just need to have the contacts of an emergency plumber when it happens. Why do I need to show up at the property at 2 a.m.? Just because there's an issue. Just have the tenant call the plumber and pay for the invoice the next day. At least that's for me anyways, okay? Like if you really think about it, I don't know how to fix a toilet, okay? So there's no point in me waking up at 2 a.m. and showing up. It's pointless, okay? But with all the experience I've had, here are the top 3 mistakes you need to avoid as a landlord so you don't have to be part of the landlord horror stories that you hear all about, okay? So if you like content like this, make sure you give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the Prime Property channel. The button will be on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. You can click it right here. Problem number 1, not screening your tenant properly. If you panic and took the first person that submitted a rental application, eek. This is a common mistake because in your first one, you're like, oh my God, I need to cover my mortgage payments. I need to put someone there really quickly. But I can tell you, the headache of getting a bad tenant out is so much worse than just losing a few bucks due to the mortgage payment, okay? I'd say 95% of the tenant issues can be solved with properly screening your tenants, okay? These are the common things you really need to look out for when screening for them before you let them in and give them keys. Number 1, having a steady income. Especially during this pandemic, you want a consistent non-COVID-19 affected type of employment. A second one is look at their credit report. Having a good score is good, but that's not the end all be all. You need to look at their delinquency payments, how they're utilizing their credit and how much debt they're holding on to because you want to be top of mind for when their payments need to be done and they only have so much money. Number 3, reference checks. You need to call the reference and make sure they are correct, okay? You also need to know the right questions to ask because there are really good tenants at faking references. Like a very good example I see a lot is, why would you want to call the last landlord for a reference check? Just think about it. If the last landlord needs them out because they're a pain in the butt, do you think they're going to give them like the most glowing review so that they leave and go into your property? Just think about it. Maybe not the wrong person to call, right? You need to be cautious of these things because if there are any red flags, you need to stop it and just move on, okay? There's gonna be a lot of problems in the future if you don't screen properly. Fourth one of things to look out for, find out if they have any online presence. It's like Google search them. If they say they have no pets, they don't smoke, and their profile photo on Facebook or Instagram is them smoking with a pet, red flag, opposite, just leave it on, move on, right? There are also other things that I look out for, such as like income to rent ratio to make sure it's correct, the payment frequencies. So there's a lot of things you need to understand. So if you're unsure about the entire process for screening, you can hire our team, we'll put the contacts here. But if you wanna try finding a tenant on your own, a good program that I've used before is called Neighborly. I'll put it on the screen for you. You guys can use that. I think it's $25 per check, okay? Problem number 2, not inspecting the unit at least once a year. I always put an inspection clause in my leases to make sure that I have the ability to enter the unit to inspect it at least once or twice a year, okay? The reason for that is you want to 1, make sure there's no damages, and 2, showing up at your property tells the tenant that you're an active participating landlord and that, they're more likely to keep the property in better condition. Because if you are an absent landlord, then the tenant starts to take care of the property less and less because you don't show up to make sure it's good. And that's when you see more damages and extra wear and tear when you get the unit back. And that's when you have to spend money to renovate it. So you don't want to be that landlord. And a simple walkthrough once a year will probably do the trick. I mean, it's also good to maintain a relationship with your tenant because remember, your tenants pay your mortgage, okay, so they can keep the property. And I personally like to think of them more as clients than renters. Mindset change, right? Problem number 3, not sending your N4 notice of late payment right away, okay? You could be nice to your tenants, but the minute there's a late payment, you must send the N4 of late notice of payment right away. No questions asked. This is mandatory. Don't tune out. You must do this right away. No matter what the reason is that the tenant gives you, do it right away. The N4 is the first step that gets you to the landlord-tenant board, and if they continue to delay their rate payment or don't even pay you, then you're in trouble because pre-COVID, it takes anywhere between like 4 to 6 months to get to the landlord-tenant board, which means that if you don't send the N4, the longer you delay it, the harder it is for you to get to the tenant board because you have to go through the process of sending the N4 first. So this is when you hear all those horror stories of tenants not paying rent and then the landlord not being able to pay rent and then maybe they have to lose their property and then sell the property because no one's carrying their mortgage. You see how it's a big problem? It doesn't matter what the tenant tells you. You have to treat this like the business. If they are late for rent, even one day, you must submit it to the you must submit the N4 to the tenant because you have to let them know that you are ready to go the distance, because if it goes the distance, the longer you delay it, the more money you lose, okay? So listen carefully, please, okay? If your tenant is late, submit the N4 to them right away, okay? Now, you may sound like, oh, this is really mean if I'm constantly sending them the N4, but you have to do this to protect yourself, okay? So I hope you guys found this helpful. If you're a landlord, I hope this is something that you can learn from previous mistakes of other people and not be part of the horror stories. If you're a first-time investor or looking to get into real estate and landlording is gonna be afraid to you, don't worry. Our brokerage, our services are provided that we help you find a property from A all the way to Z, and we help you fill the tenant as well, so you can avoid being kind of that headline story of landlord doesn't get paid rent for 1 year, okay? We're able to help you with that because we've seen enough, okay? So if that's you, make sure you reach out to me. I'll put my contacts right here. Until next time, your move, your future. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.